We are here checking in at the West Nassau Museum in Callahan, Florida. I'm here with John Hendricks here, and we are doing a video on discussion about the Battle of Alligator Bridge, and the museum and John Hendricks here have been very kind enough to provide information and help us out in coming up with some great content on this particular battle and also the general area. So I guess to start, what are some basic things that you know offhand about the battle and stuff?
Well, as you know, the British took over Florida for 20 years, 1863 to 1880. So 1763 to 1783. And just bad timing. You had a lot of British loyalists here. The Spanish left. They went to Cuba. And so the British came in and they were loyal to the crown. So as the storm clouds started brewing on the 13 colonies above them, they did not want to join. So the British were firmly entrenched. They used St. Augustine as a base for their operations during the war, when the war broke out. And so Washington said, we don't want the British on our northern border, which is Canada, so they did attack Canada, but they don't want us on our southern border as well. That's why even though Florida was very, very sparsely populated and really wasn't a producer of anything of worth, Washington did not want England or British troops on his southern border. So when the British got here, they built what was called the King's Road, connecting St. Augustine and New Smyrna Beach on up through here, going into Georgia and South Carolina. And that became the gateway to Florida by land. And so when the Patriots started coming in, wanting to drive out the British, there was 5, Washington signed off on 5 trips. The first one wasn't really non-confrontational early on in the war. And they came across, they kind of camped out, but there was they started rumors that the Indians were attacking up in Georgia, so they left. That was the first excursion. But the second excursion was Battle of Thomas Creek, which is further south on the county line between Duval and Nassau, and that was in 1777 when the British defeated the Patriots in a mishap there. But then in June of 1778 was the third attempt. The Patriots came down and they crossed the river, and there was a fort in Kings Ferry about 20 miles from here on the river on the Florida side called Fort Tonnan. It was named after the second British governor. And the British did not want the fort to fall into the hands of the Americans, so they burned it. And they retreated. There's a little skirmish in Cabbage Swamp just south of Kings Ferry. But the British followed the Kings Road back down, and they got right about to where it is now, Alligator Bridge. There was a bridge across the river. It's unusual. Usually you have to ford the creeks. That's why the kind of Kings Road went inland a lot, because if you go from here to the ocean, lots of creeks, lots of marshes. So the road went inland. And it was rare to have a bridge. There was a bridge that the British built across Alligator Creek, and that was the point where the British said, and Thomas Brown and the East Florida Rangers said, enough's enough, and they turned around and kind of trapped the Patriots. And that was in June of 1778, right here on Alligator Creek, which we'll probably walk down to shortly.
Okay. So now my next question that I have is, I know that you are a wealth of knowledge greatly, and I know that you were able to help me out over the phone when we initially talked.
I do remember that.
As far as coming across the information as far as the location of finding the location of where the Alligator Bridge battle occurred. And would you mind walking me through that process again? As far as what you're able to.
Well, that's probably the number one question people ask: where was the bridge? Since there was a bridge, and the bridge is mentioned in the notes and the archives, especially fold3.com. They got a good record of all the battles and stuff, and there was a bridge here. And the question is, where was the bridge? Where was the road? And the furthest back I was able to go, I mentioned the Spanish land grants in 1821. After British lost the Revolutionary War, they gave Florida back to Spain. And if you lived here, so all the English people who supported the crown, they left. They went either back to England or they went to Bahamas. Some people came here to stay. If you stayed here, you had to prove you lived here. So you had to go and survey the land. You had to get your neighbors' depositions. You had to file a brief with the U.S. government. And so there were Spanish land grants all along Thomas Creek and all along Nassau River. They didn't call it Thomas Creek back in the day. They called it Nassau South Prong of Nassau River. And then when John Thomas came along, they named it after him. Well, same with Alligator. It was the Spanish named it the Alligator Creek. It's part of Mills Creek as well. So there's a question. There is a Spanish land grant, and when we do the marker, we'll walk up there. There's an old Stuckey's there. It's now a Cedar River Seafood. That's the corner. That's the southwest corner of the Spanish land grant. This is Juarez, and it shows a dotted line of the road cutting through that corner. And it mentions, they call it back then the public road or Camino Real or the road to St. Mary's. One of the three. They have several names for the road. So it mentions that it is a certain location in that parcel, and that puts it right about where it is now. And once we go there, you can see to the west of US 1 where it crosses Alligator Creek, it's all swamp. Not a very good place to cross. And if you go to the east downstream, it's very steep. There's about a 6-foot bank from here, probably been a couple more miles. So this is almost like a natural point to where it's perfect. It's very narrow. You don't have the bank, there. That's probably why they had to build a bridge anyway, because it's hard to ford a river when you have to go down into a bank and then come back up again. So it's at least 6 feet down, and you can see it once. But from here on, it's basically swamp, so it would make sense. In 1921, they had just 2 lanes, US 1, through the location where the bridge is now. And the guy was traveling down, and he was into insects and tadpoles and stuff, and he said, it's kind of ironic. It's weird how you write something back in the day, it has nothing to do with anything, and that survives. He mentions, we're stuck in traffic. There's a car stuck on the old bridge crossing the creek. So it means there was a highway bridge before US 1 came along. And so it makes you wonder, is this like a natural point? And also there was an old tram as well. So as you see, and then when they widened the bridge in the 1950s, they picked that spot as well. It's a natural point, it's like anything. And why reinvent the wheel? If someone found it as a natural crossing point, then they'd be used over and over again. And but there was a bridge, Dixie Highway, which is roughly around the Civil War to when they built the Dixie Highway in 1917. There was a bridge further upstream, probably about a mile from here, and a guy owned it. He charged toll for that. But the actual, and some people say, well, that's the King's Road, that's where the battle was. Well, that's in the middle of a swamp. This is right here where it's very, very narrow on the point. So I think this is the point. And of course, you're talking about a big battle. They probably sped up and down. Didn't all fall to the bridge. They probably had to spread a little bit because the creek kind of flows south of due east, but when it gets here in Callahan, it makes a big horseshoe. It almost flows north a little bit, and then east, and then back southeast.
Okay, well that makes a lot of sense as to how that came about then, though. So, well, thank you for sharing that part.
Yes.
Now I guess let's go look at the marker and see what we can find as well.
Yeah, so let's go to the marker. And the marker was put up in 1936 by the Sons of American Revolution, so it's almost a 90-year-old marker. They just restored it. And we'll walk on the bridge, and you can see the 1921 abutment down the thing. You see how almost like a natural point there. Okay,
go. Let's go check it out.
All right, there you go.
So this is the Road marker right here.
Yep, 1936. Unfortunately, the state of Florida does not recognize this as an official state marker. I don't know why. I think they started their program in the 1960s. So anything prior to that, any marker prior to that, the state does not recognize as an official state marker. So it's a shame. As you see, 1936, so 89 years ago, they thought that on that side, and then kind of got lost, kind of got forgotten, and SAR said, "Hey, you need, let's do something to they moved it over here." And I want to say 2012 maybe, and then every year they've been meeting, trying to commemorate. Because I think it wasn't just a bump in the road. You had 13 American and 9 British. It was a battle. I mean, they say skirmish, but I mean, it kept the British. It kept the British in Florida. It was the last major fight too.
Yeah. That's crazy how that all works out, though. It's so in other words, even the sign itself is historical. Is what you're saying. Yeah. Even the sign itself is historical. Yep. Because it was in the 30s. Yeah. And it's just crazy. And I mean, I wish that it was considered a official marker. Because
it's true. I know. Yeah. But they did a good job. The guy who restores markers for the state of Florida, SAR paid him to come back and fix it. He did a really good job.
I think his name is Vale or something. Yeah.
He's got several names. Vale or
something.
Tim Philman, I think.
Yeah.
Marker man, I call him. But yeah, he's a good guy. He lives in Bushnell.
Yeah.
Good guy. Yeah.
I'm familiar with him though, because I'm part of his marker page for Florida. He has like a Facebook page. Yeah. As crazy as it sounds, he has a Facebook page on it, and he talks about some of the markers that he's restored and all. And it's like it's pretty really fascinating.
Is of all the markers in Florida, he's the only one. He's the only official. Let's say he's the only official marker restorer. He goes around and restores. He did the one up there. The one up there at Thomas Creek, US 1 is about 1974. That's from the children of the American Revolution. Of course, when they moved the side of the Battle of Thomas Creek down to our Arnold Road, closer to the 95, they put up a new marker about probably about 8 years ago now. Yeah, incredible. I know it's noisy.
Let's go look at the bridge and we'll see if we can conquer the noise a little bit.
See, that's the old abutment of the old 2-lane highway, 1921.
Right there.
Right there. There's probably more there too, right there. It went this way. What is picture of these 2 lanes not being here? The 2-lane highway was on that side, and there's a big sharp curve roughly where that gas station is. So you came through Callahan, 1921 to the 50s, and a big old sharp curve. Well, the old railroad came through here. So the road had to make a big sharp curve to avoid the railroad. The railroad was realigned in 1905, but there's an old rail bed right there. That's why it had to come this way. Yeah. So they got this picture I'll send to you of them. They had chopped up half the bridge to build this 4-lane bridge. But there's a bridge pylon underneath this. So before the guy was crossing the bridge, he mentioned the tadpoles and this and the other. And he says, well, we're waiting on the traffic stop. We're waiting on a wreck on the old bridge. And there is a remnant of an old bridge underneath here. But yeah, that's the old butler over there.
Okay.
Probably another section right here. All that goes out here. Also, we hadn't had rain in a while, so it's very, I think, oh, here we go. Yeah, dry it is. Yeah, we didn't have the rain problem. There's part of it up in there too. So from there to there, so draw a line. So it's going out that way. We didn't have Stuckies. That Cedar River Seafood was where the road went. The big, and then another curve. Wow, it's incredible how. I mean, it's not even flowing.
Yeah, just.
We hadn't had rain about a month. There's those tadpoles or whatever that guy was talking about. Yeah, there's a button right there. Draw a line. So the picture. At DOT, they took some pictures surveying, and they had torn half the bridge down. There's a picture of a guy fishing off the other half of the bridge while they was building this. So I'll send that to you. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, please do.
This is Alligator Creek. You see the bike now, you've got a 2 or 3 feet, and then a plateau, and then down to the creek. So if you go from there probably to the thing, that's at least 6 feet, maybe 8. Same here, you got a little embankment, plateau, floodplain, and then back up again.
Okay.
So you go further down, and it's deeper. You go that way, it's a swamp. Wow, it's hard to believe how low that creek is.
That's a pretty big embankment here.
Incredible.
That's a pretty darn big embankment here, you know.
Yeah. If it was cold weather, it'd be good to go back there, but it's not quite cold enough to go back on that side. The creek splits. I call it Rutherford Island because there's an African American merchant, and he owned that land from there here on that side of the creek, and he used to flood the creek and grow rice. Probably 1920, 1910. He passed away in 1932, but you don't think of Callahan or any town in Florida being rice cities. So that's moving on rice and carried up here to Lakeville. There's an island there, probably about a good quarter of a mile long and not very wide. I call it Rutherford Island after him, where he dammed it up. Yeah, it's incredible how. Take a picture of that too. I mean, it's going at all. Wow. Also, west of Callahan, there's a bypass road, and there's some beavers there, and they're notorious of damming up the creek too.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's very interesting.
Yep.
Hey y'all, just wanted to thank you for checking out my video. If you like it, please like and subscribe, and have a great rest of the day.